we talk through a couple of these points here that I've sort of highlighted. I mentioned about this topic sentence a minute ago. We've got another one here, and you'll start to see a pattern in terms of what the topic sentences do. And the topic sentences, as I said, it signposts the focus of the paragraph. That's fundamentally what it's about. That's what it's trying to do. This often links, in a results chapter, often links to the structural organization, whether it's research question driven, whether it's hypotheses driven, whether it's thematically driven. And this is a clear example of a theme, for example. So reference to the way digital change is affecting the process of planning for advertising campaigns. That's a theme. They're highlighting that as a theme. Again, you could argue it's a subset of the data. It's sort of an overlap there. But that's what it is, it's a theme. So it highlights that, and it's really, really clear. You get a lot of this phrasing as well in the results, a number of interviewees, or a statistic if it's quantitative. And again, that's a case of making it clear what the data shows, whether it's statistical, whether it's humans, whatever it is. It's making it clear what the data shows. So, good clear topic sentence, as I said, arranged around a theme or a finding in this case. I've put here, let the quotes do some of the work. This obviously is only if you're doing qualitative. I suppose you could say more generally, let the data do some of the work. The reason I say let the quotes do some of the work is sometimes I've seen examples where a lot of narration, a lot of sentences precede the quotes, and then when you get to the quotes, they don't really add anything because you feel like the writer's given you everything you need. So when you're dealing with quotes, try and let the quotes do some of the work. So yes, by all means, introduce the quotes like they've done here, and provide a little bit of elaboration on what the, in this case, interviewee said, but let the quotes do some of the work and let the quotes do some of the talking. As I said, if you say too much, by the time you introduce the quotes, they don't mean that much to the reader because they don't feel like they're really advancing the point further. You've also got to make good decisions about which quotes you pick as well, which of course is important. But that's something that's happening here that I think is good. They don't say too much. They allow the quotes to do a bit of the work. There's an argument they could have pulled back a little bit maybe. Really all you need is something that says, for instance, some interviewees talked about this, and then you provide the quote. Sometimes that's all you need. Sometimes you need a little bit more. If you're dealing with quotes as well, when quoting, I put there, delete any unnecessary digressions or fillers. I've put one here, or I've highlighted one here, where it says, what they've done is they've quoted the participants verbatim, word for word, exactly as they sounded on the recording. You don't have to do that. You want to accurately represent what the participants in this case have said, the same way you want to accurately represent what the data shows if it's statistical data. But with quotes, you're dealing with humans, so there's going to be digressions, there's going to be mistakes, there's going to be sort of fillers like I've just done, and slip-ups in their speech. You don't need to include all of that stuff. You want to try and make your interviewees, your participants, sound clear, coherent, and intelligent. There might be some reason why keeping these is important if it shows some hesitation, or if you're really interested in something linguistically, but otherwise you shouldn't need them, and it can become distracting to read. Likewise with digressions, if it's something they talk about that's completely irrelevant that you don't need, you can take it out, it's fine. The ellipses here sort of indicates that. So if you took out, you could put ellipses in between, either in square brackets or just as I've done there. That's the convention. So if we look at the second part, this is sort of continuing from the same example. We've got another clear topic sentence, moved on to another theme. Again, it's highlighted. I've highlighted there. It's again presented in a really clear way. They've steered the reader in this direction, which is fine. Done the same process again, introduced some quotes. There's a couple of points here that the previous paragraph we just looked at didn't do because of the positioning. What this one does here is there's a couple of points here. I put there, consolidates the knowledge and answers a question or responds to a hypothesis. So bearing in mind, you are responding in this dissertation, whatever it is you're doing, you're trying to respond to a question or questions, or you're trying to answer hypotheses or a hypothesis, or just generally try to achieve an aim. That has to be a sort of underlying point. That's something you're trying to achieve throughout this. So you have to really, in the results and the discussion, and to a certain extent in the conclusion more generally, actually get to the point where you will answer that question or questions or respond to what it is you're trying to achieve. And the results is really the first place that you do that. And you can see an example here. The first highlighted passage here is them sort of doing that. And then at the end, they're doing something different, which I'll explain in a minute. But if you look at what they're doing there, that's what's happening. They're consolidating the knowledge. They're bringing together what they've learned from these two themes. And they're saying, well, this proves this. Now, you don't have the whole dissertation here to see what the research questions were or what the hypotheses or whatever it was they were trying to achieve. But you can see at least what they're doing is they're bringing the information together and they're saying, okay, this is what we've learned. This is what it proves. That, at the most, is all you need to do in the results. You don't need to explore that and what does it mean for the sort of the future research and what does it mean for industry or whatever it is you're trying to do. You don't need to do that. That's for the discussion. The results stops at that point. This proves this. This answers this question. So they do that really nicely. What they then do as well, I think this actually started the next paragraph, but I brought it up to join this paragraph just to make a point, which is it ends on a counter. And what that does is it prompts the discussion, or I shouldn't use the word discussion, it prompts the move into the next paragraph of the results. So they end on a counter, prompting a new theme. I put their linearity. This is the writer moving the story forward. This is the writer moving the results forward. And they're saying to the reader, we've looked at this, this shows this, here's a new subset of results, or here's a new theme. In this case, it counters what they've just said. And by ending on that counter, it's a really nice segue into the next part of the results. These are fantastic, particularly in results and discussion chapters where you're trying to show the connections between the results and the discussion points. And this is a great way to keep the story moving forward. But if you do this at the end of a paragraph, for example, it has to be picked up at the start of the next paragraph. It has to work as a prompt. If you end on that note and don't take it any further, then it's a big problem. So end of this paragraph, start of the next paragraph, doesn't really matter. But that's what it's doing.